Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Healthcare Leadership Live. I am incredibly excited about today's topic because it's one I haven't tackled yet, but it's one that can have a really big impact on your clinical operation, your clinical business, and that is clinical research. And we have someone here today from the world of clinical research, someone that I know from the ophthalmology world, the world of retina. And his name is Kyle Fogarty. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so glad to have you because I really think this is an important topic. And, you know, this is a business, right? Clinical research is a business
Oh, yeah.
and healthcare is a business. And clinical research can be a good way to augment what you're doing and help you stay on the forefront of science and offer options to patients. Anyway, we can get into all of that. But if you would just tell the audience here about yourself and about your business, Polus Health.
Certainly. Yeah. So my name is Kyle. Like Mike said, we used to work together a couple of years ago. And I think we had an interesting career path because I think we both ended up leaving our previous roles at right around the same time. And I ended up founding my company, which is Polus Health. And so I won't go too deep into detail because I'm sure we will later on. But, at Polus Health, we're using humans and AI really to streamline and reduce the bloat and the waste that comes along with screenings, screen failures, and clinical trials. So the goal is right to decrease screen failures while really rapidly accelerating that enrollment timeline and getting trials from that enrollment phase to completion of enrollment, so we can get them on to submission and hopefully FDA approval at the end of the day.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely get into that. What I wanted to start with is, a lot of the people that I connect with and on the podcast, my guess is and my belief is that they don't have clinical research set up
Yeah.
yet. And so I wanted to just talk about the business case and the thought process for should we get into clinical research and what is involved with that?
Right.
And obviously that could be a really long discussion.
We'll go over the 30 minutes for sure, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
So we're going to try to keep it real simple, but right now, would you say that it is a good time for a business to consider adding clinical research to their current clinical practice?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think now's a great time. I mean, if we're talking a more general point, not just, we both worked in retina, but I mean, yeah, it's the market's had, a 6 to 8% growth year after year. It's been pretty robust. And it's also the trend line's increasing. So we're seeing potential that it might even go above 8% growth this year. And really it comes down to a few things. At the end of the day, a lot of diseases and a lot of disease subtypes, they kind of have an age factor, right? And so we're seeing that on the average, the population is increasing in age. So more people in that targeted demographic means more available people that need medications, means more push for these sponsors and these drug companies to create drugs to fill that need, which means an increase in growth. And that's not just retina, that's everything. North America right now, in terms of clinical trials, we're dominating the market. We have a 53% market share back in 2024. And we're seeing that phase one segments are growing the fastest. They had a CAGR of about 9.6% last year. So, I mean, it's a growing industry, and especially with, people having certain feelings about world trends and economic trends. I mean, to be in an industry where you're seeing year after year growth and accelerated growth, I mean, I think that's fantastic for getting into business.
Are there, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but are there specialties or subspecialties where it's especially attractive to get into clinical research right now?
Yeah, I think, retina right now, we have somewhere around 360 active clinical trials on, and that number is increasing. Last year, we saw that cardiology segment expanded, and right now it's projected to have the largest market share, which is 37% in 2024. Oncology had the largest projected CAGR growth. So, I mean, we're seeing retina, we're seeing oncology. And I mean, there's a lot of factors for it, right? We have a whole host of new technologies, including AI. So it's accelerating the timeline from concept to getting it into an actual model that you can start doing your cellular and your further on testing before you even get to talking about humans. And I mean, that's a huge component of creating a drug and creating a timeline. So being able to have something that can rapidly accelerate that process in order to get a molecule actually designed and made and tested in a much shorter time, I mean, that just cuts out, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D and accelerates the timeline to get us into, thinking about an IND or a phase one.
So there's opportunity out there,
Yes.
especially in certain segments. So
Oh yeah.
that's good. So then let's say you're in retina, you're in
Mhm.
cardiology, maybe oncology or some other specialty where it seems like, it seems like a good opportunity. What is the first thing you should be thinking about? Is it, do I have enough subjects? Is it, can I get the studies? Like, what
Right.
are the first things, the basics that might help you decide if you're the right practice to add this on?
Right. I mean, I think the first thing you really got to consider is if you're a practice, specifically if you're a physician that's looking to become, a principal investigator, is, how much time do I have? Because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, right, right now you're seeing all of your clinical patients, and it is going to be a time burden, especially the more trials you're a principal investigator on, the more paperwork you're going to have to manage, the more subjects you're going to have to monitor, and the
Mhm.
more staff you're going to have to monitor. So I think time is a major component, because it does take a chunk of time. And from what I've seen from talking with other principal investigators, sub investigators, are, do you have a passion for it? Right, it is going to be a significant chunk, but if you're really passionate about the medication, it kind of causes that mindset switch to not just be in the clinic. Oh, here's the disease, I need to make sure I treat, whether it's retina so I can preserve vision, cardiology to preserve, perfusion and everything that goes along there. um, I might not immediately treat, which is a really weird mindset to be on. But now I'm thinking, oh, maybe they qualify for this trial, and taking that extra minute or two to think about that and then setting that up. The next major thing to think about is, yeah, staff and space. You're going to need a separate staff to run the research department, and you're going to need a space to handle these trials, because nothing's worse than, and I'm sure, Mike, you remember whenever you have limited space and you've got the research department and the clinic department competing for space, and as a result, both of them slow down, which can cause headaches on both ends of the spectrum. So I think,
Mhm.
making sure you have the time, the space, and then really thinking about the financial and startup costs, because it is, going to be a situation where you got to invest to make. And there are, a fair amount of initial startup costs to get all the certifications, the space, the staff, the training, the regulatory, all sorted out before you can even begin to think about getting a trial at your site.
Is there, and this could probably vary wildly,
Mhm.
but if you've made the decision, I've got the passion for this, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And obviously, construction, that's a whole other
Right.
thing. But let's assume you've got a couple of lanes, a couple of rooms, and you've got a room to see some study patients. What's a realistic time frame from I want to do this to I can see my first study patient?
Oh, that's tough. You're not making this easy on me, Mike. So I mean, all right. So let's go from the standpoint that, all right, you've got, assuming you've got, magically you've got a new an available floor in your office where no one's using it, and you've got all the equipment, and you've got the staff already lined up. You've got probably an experienced, research director that can kind of help assist in the process. They've been there, they've done that. Um, at the end of the day, one, you got to start, reaching out to key opinion leaders. You got to start reaching out to the sponsors,
Mhm.
and really doing your homework, because your avenues right now are obviously upcoming trials. Um, a lot of the big sponsors already have a lot of preferred clinics that they work with. They've worked with in the past. They know they can deliver the candidates they know. So you're going to be fighting that uphill battle. Something I'm familiar with the startup. And at the end, and then you've also got, situations where maybe it's an established trial, but they've had to expand. They've run into delays. They've run into recruitment issues, and now they need to add new sites. That might be an appealing sector. Or, at the end of the day, looking for those smaller startup, sponsors that, just like starting a research practice, they don't have the network yet. They're looking for sites. They're looking for hungry young sites that can come in and deliver the patients. So, I mean, conservatively, maybe 6 months to a year if everything lines up perfectly, but it could be even more than that. I know sometimes in this industry, it feels like, um, there's so much work to do, but it moves very slowly. And it's just, because we got to jump through all the correct hoops and all the correct forms to make sure everything's above board with the FDA. You're abiding by your GCH, ICP practices and regulatory, HIPAA, everything. So it can take some time. So I think that's another thing people think about. Oh, I can get this going in a month or two. I'd say it takes a little longer than that.
So this is a good time for me to pause. If anyone is watching here live and you have a question about clinical research, I can tell you that Kyle knows his stuff, from the site to study acquisition to subject recruiting to the staff. He knows all of that. And so if you have a question or a comment, he's a great resource. So go ahead and toss that into the comment box. Do you think that, and we're getting into subject recruitment here, which I think is kind of your area.
Yes.
That there's a certain type of physician that is, or a certain personality characteristic that's going to be better at recruiting subject into studies, and what would that be?
Yeah. 100%. So I think if we're talking about the human factor when it comes to recruitment, one, you have to have someone that's incredibly motivated and someone that's willing to do their due diligence. And by that I mean, we're not in the era of clinical trials and studies and drugs where, you're looking for someone who's over the age of 18, who's mentally sound and doesn't have any major glaring diseases like cancer, right? We're past that phase. We're in some pretty novel, pretty amazing, and pretty advanced technologies. And as a result, that means that the criteria to get a subject in is very stringent. And sometimes it really doesn't seem to make a lot of sense until you remember that, the drugs that are coming out now, we're going against the drugs that were approved in the late 90s, early 2000s. So if we're going to do apples to apples, we can't use our brand new fancy technology. I mean, to use a retina example, right? We look at eye photos. Right now, we have these beautiful ultra wide field, 250 plus degree field of view of the eye. They look amazing and we can see so much of the eye. But then you remember when these drugs were approved, we were using the old Topcon cameras with the little 50-degree field of view and trying to do a 4 wide or a 7 field or something like that. So you got to take the extra step to really dig down into that protocol, those criteria, and understand why they're making these decisions, right? Why the way they're grading a patient at the reading center is not the way you're going to grade them in the clinic. And that is a really hard mindset to get out of as an investigator versus just being a medical practitioner. You change your mindset a lot. And so I think someone who is motivated, who's highly adaptable, and can juggle all that in their brain while also juggling everything else they have to do to, do their job and ensure the health and safety of their patients. That takes a lot. So really having someone who's really, really able to juggle all of that. And that goes not just for, medical physicians, but also any RNs, PAs, or even the staff that's involved, being able to change their mindset like that on the fly while interacting with the patient, I think is the major key. And that's not just retina, that's all of the research right now.
And so you're talking about getting out of that mindset of I'm treating a patient based on the current available technology to now I've got to assess whether this is a good patient in lieu of, kind of old standards, that kind of thing. Is that what you mean? Like getting out of the clinical mindset versus
100%, 100%. And, there's other avenues, shameless plug. That's where Polus Health comes in, so to help with that mindset. But yeah, I think if you're really gung ho and really wanting to get in this space, I think that's the number one thing is shifting the mindset and then, being really excited about the trial. I think if you're going to be getting into it, it is work, a lot of extra work. And, if it's not something you're enthusiastic about, it's really hard to recruit if you're not really, the patients can sense it. Like, obviously we're not trying to influence them at all. We want to give them all of the available material, but they're going to pick up. If you're not excited about the trial, you're not going to even think about pitching it to the trial, and the patients will pick up on that. Like, well, if my healthcare provider who I'm trusting with my health isn't excited, why should I be excited? So I think all of that plays a role in driving up recruitment and trial activity at sites.
This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help clinical healthcare businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. Yeah, if I put myself in the shoes of a patient and my physician is saying, "Hey, I think, you'd be a good candidate for this." There's a lot of trust there.
Yeah.
I've had a few guests on the podcast. We talk about trust. Talked with Mandy Kanzler about that, and Brandy Musgrave, and in a clinical setting, trust is important, and I think in research, trust is really important because we're going to try something new here, and I don't know. It seems like a critical moment.
Oh, it's very critical. I mean, that's kind of the foundation of GCP and the informed consent form is, we're going to do everything in our power to minimize and ensure that, there's no risk, but we cannot guarantee it. It's a clinical trial. Risk is inherent to the process, and really being able to have those discussions openly and frankly with those candidates saying, hey, like, we can't promise this. We can promise we're going to do everything in our power to take the best possible care of you. But there is a risk. We still, we wouldn't be participating in this trial if we think that there was too much risk. We think that this trial is safe and this drug has potential benefit. But, you also have to be able to have that and not get too excited to where you're almost unduly influencing. So
Right.
really towing that line and understanding, like you said, just how much trust these patients are putting into you to take care of them, to explain what they're getting into, and then that you're going to be their guide through this whole unknown process.
So you talked a little bit about Polus,
Yep.
and so I think that now's a good time to, what is it that you guys do, and how do you help in this whole process,
Right.
this whole crazy process of research?
Right. Yeah. So I had this idea back when we were working together, and we were working on these trials, and I was just seeing gross inefficiencies and also just areas that this could improve. And the main area I saw was the screening component. Every site has their own way to do it. There are other companies and providers that do it differently. Every site is different in their methodology, but on the whole, the kind of industry issue we were seeing was screen failures. And by screen failure, I mean, you think you have a great candidate, you bring them in for a screening, the sponsor pays all the CROs and all the other third-party vendors, all their fees, they're paying the patient, they're paying the site for the visit, just for that patient not to get in. So we've, you spent all this money and time for no meaningful data generated. And screen failures were on the rise. It was, trials were at 50% or higher. Protocols are getting more advanced. And so I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so, I trial very rudimentary. I mean, it's embarrassing to even call it coding, but just some Google API to really filter down and isolate it. And then all of a sudden we drove screen failure rates way down. We started getting enrollments. We, eventually, I believe we ended up becoming one of the highest recruiters on that trial, at least in the top 10. And I was like, wow, there's benefit here. This is something that works, but how can we take it further? And so that's where I came up with Polus. And so really what we're doing is we're using, trained, certified, experienced humans that understand the industry, that understand the protocols, and understand that kind of intrinsic factor where you have the experience. It's maybe not on paper that you're saying no or yes, but from experience, oh, when I see X, Y, and Z, these things really are what get patients in the trial. And then we're also developing a novel AI model to also further, take over for the humans, partner with the humans, and really accelerate screen failures. So what we're doing is we're reviewing all available data possible in order to pre-screen and identify clinical trial candidates to remove the burden from the sites. Because at the end of the day, all the coordinators that are working on the trial, they don't have the time to sit there for hours and hours and go through the hundreds of patients that they're seeing in the clinics. They don't have the time because their job is to see the subjects of the clinical trials, gather, enter the data, and make sure everything for the trial is running smoothly. So no one has the time to do it. So we're there to really remove that time and effort burden from the sites, provide them with quality candidates for clinical trials the first time in a way that benefits the site. We're not coming in and trying to revamp any of their processes. We're there to supplement their processes, and from their side look like, hey, we don't even notice that Polus is working in the background, and then we come in and there's our report with our candidates for the week ready to go. So all we have to do is get our ducks in a row to get our ICF ready and make sure we're there to pitch the trial to the candidate. So and then at the end of the day, for the sponsor side, we're there to really drive forward enrollment, accelerate enrollment, and minimize that time you spend in the enrollment phase. Because the last statistic I saw, the average slip for a phase 3 clinical trial is somewhere like 3 to 12 months. I mean, that's a huge financial and time burden. And that whole time you're waiting just to get that final patient enrolled so that you can even then finally get to the end point of the trial to then submit to the FDA. I mean, that's a huge financial sink for any sponsor, whether it's big or small, to do. And so we're really there to reduce screen failures, increase the hit rate, and drive forward enrollment and accelerate it to get to the finish line of the trial faster and more efficiently.
And that's yeah, that is a huge, as you said, there's a huge point of waste there because, and this is something for clinics that are new to research or thinking about it, is finding subjects.
Yeah.
And the CROs, they know this, sponsors, they know this, but if you're thinking about getting into it, this is a big area that's going to take up, as you said, a lot of time figuring out who is going to be a suitable person for this study. Do you work with sites as much as sponsor CROs? What is your business model
Yeah.
look
So
like?
I'd say when it comes to the Polus business model, right? Um, we're more sponsor and site at the end of the day, and that's just the way we've structured the business model. But CROs we also have worked with. But the main thing is, so for example, let's say we work with a sponsor when we're on a trial, then it's a multiple sites on that trial that we're then partner with, right?
Mm,
So we're coming in at no cost to the site. Um, we're through the sponsor and we're there to help the sites and identify the candidates for that trial. Or if we're working directly with the site, right, we're there really to help you on all of your trials. So if you've got 3 trials, you're working
mm,
towards them, Polus comes in, we're doing all this, we're identifying the candidates for trials A, B, and C, and then we're providing that data to you. But and then we're also not storing any of that data. I know that's a big part in HIPAA and safety and security and regulation, right? We're not
mm.
storing, we're not making any extra money on your de-identified data. We're really there just to benefit the site and benefit the sponsor and alleviate that time and financial burden to both.
Oh, well, yeah, that sounds like a wonderful idea, and I
Yeah,
think the time is right for that. And I'm sure you guys are going to thrive with that. Um, I'm curious, kind of getting into some of the cool factor here.
yeah.
If Are there any studies right now that you think maybe are kind of eye-opening, no pun intended,
Oh, I
or
mean,
really changing things?
yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I've got, and I'm not just going to go into retina here. I mean, there's so many, and, back in the early stages, retina was kind of piggybacking off oncology with their anti-VEGF platforms. And, that's, Avastin, Eylea, Lucentis, and then there's other drugs. I mean, now we've got some incredible therapies, right? We've got AAV, adeno-associated viral vectors, right? We've got cell therapies, like combo drugs, complement inhibitors, paired with AV, paired with other things, devices. I mean, there's so many really cool trials. I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm trying to go outside of retina, even though that's kind of my bread and butter, right? Like something like Mara GTX, right? They've got so many AAVs, Sjogren's, Parkinson's, ALS. Those are major big time diseases, and AAV is kind of coming in and helping with that. And then, from the retina side, Mara, Regenx Bio, Adverum, all on the, everything from wet AMD to geographic atrophy to, retinitis pigmentosa. I mean, it's awesome. Cell therapies, OpRegen just had their phase 1/2A data out, and potentially a GA vision increase, not just stabilization. I mean, that'd be huge if that's
Mm,
coming down the pipeline. Speaking of GA, right? Complement inhibitor, what is Syfovre, just got FDA approved, right? And so they're treating an actual treatment for GA, massive. So, and
mm,
then obviously devices, we're seeing devices everywhere, whether it's something like the port delivery system in retina and ophthalmology, or, other devices. I know we've got big buzzword right now is hormone replacement therapies, having these implantable ones, so you don't have to worry about, if you've got children, have to go on testosterone, estrogen cream, rubbing it on your body because it's a gel or a lotion, and then maybe your kids or someone else gets exposed. Not
mhm.
having to deal with needles, it's just a device that goes in, provides the dose. I mean, it's huge. So many cool things going on in the space.
Yeah, I mean, just the if you're a doctor out there, it seems like it would be hard to not be excited by some of the stuff that you can offer your patients, and either through a research study or hopefully these treatments getting approved later down the road.
Right.
I think it would be so cool to be involved with that. And in my experience, the energy around the research process and the research team, it really is a whole different energy because there's an entrepreneurial spirit there. There is the idea of, hey, cutting edge science. And just from a culture
Yeah.
standpoint, I've been in dermatology, I've been in retina, and the energy in around those practices, those parts of the staff is really exciting. And it kind of bleeds into clinic as well. And it just kind of becomes a cool like cycle of like, hey, we're here to do cool science here,
Yeah.
not just, the old stuff.
No, 100%. No, I couldn't agree with you more. You've got that entrepreneurial culture because just like hunting for leads. If you're starting a company, you're hunting for the candidates, you're hunting for available trials to bid on and get selected for. And you've also got a big growth mindset, right? There's always new trials, which means there's always new things to learn. There's
Mm.
always new avenues to explore. And I think you hit the nail on the head with really, not only getting the research department excited about trials, but also the clinical department, right? Getting everyone excited. They start working together. They start hunting. It's a team effort, really, to take a trial, get it incorporated into the department, into the clinic, and then it's kind of a all hands on deck to navigate the hurdles that come with the trial and get people identified, get them in the trial, and get them back after the trial. Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Well, Kyle, I could go on and on here about research. I think that your passion for it
Yes.
is obvious. If someone wants to get in touch with you to learn more about Polus, or maybe they just have some questions about research in general and want to tap into your knowledge or your network, how can they get in touch with you or find you?
Oh, several places. Obviously, Polus and myself, we're on LinkedIn. My website is polushealth.com. I believe there's a contact form on there. Send that out. You can, it'll get to my inbox directly. Or you can even email me directly at kyle.fogarty@polushealth.com. Checking all three multiple times a day. So very easy to get a hold of me if you have any questions or especially if you want to learn more about Polus and what we're doing here in the space. And yeah,
Awesome. Well, I highly recommend anyone interested in research and interested in subject acquisition and recruitment to get with Kyle. He knows his stuff. He's super passionate and knowledgeable, especially if you guys are out there in the ophthalmology world. But you work in all
yep.
specialties, right? Um, anyway, this has been a great chat, Kyle. Thanks for being here on Healthcare Leadership Live. And to everyone listening, please follow, subscribe. My goal is to bring experts like Kyle from the operations side, research, marketing, even the mindset and the leadership and the HR to help you be a better leader. And so I'm going to continue to do that. And so thanks for listening. And now go out there and lead with confidence.